Hi everyone, welcome in the channel. Today we're gonna talk about how to import to Canada for personal use. Before we go ahead, remember to subscribe to the channel, leave a like and a comment if you enjoyed this video because this is gonna help us grow. Moving forward with our topic, today we talk about Canada, how to import in there for personal purposes. What do I mean by that? Every time a customer purchases something online, cross-border, in another country or from any website that is shipping cross-border, that's considered as a personal use because let's say that I'm a Canadian citizen, I'm purchasing something online, I'm getting for myself, right? And this means that those rules are valid for any e-commerce brand that is shipping cross-border to Canadian customers. Personal use means that those goods that you're importing are not intended for resale. Now, let's start from the basics. What are the goods that you can import? What are the goods that you cannot import for personal use? Well, there are some restrictions or prohibitions as any other country, and we saw some of them already in the former video for commercial purposes, but pretty much those are similar. We have restrictions on plants, seeds, potato seeds, or like baby care or cosmetics, especially like consumer products, more specifically about cosmetics because they contain like substances, the type of cosmetics, if they contain alcohol and such things, CBD products or oils and so on. Now, let's don't mix the country-based restrictions with the shipping restriction and international, let's say, air freight restrictions, so that are basically regulated by the IATA. So as you may know, you can ship nail polish or perfumes that contain alcohols via air and such type of restriction. Basically, those are not country-based, those are shipping restrictions because they cannot travel via air because they're dangerous, for example. So those are different types of restrictions, and Canada has also its own restrictions in terms of banned products or product that they, let's say that they need a little bit more they need some regulations, they need to be regulated because of substances, they can hurt someone's health and so on. The next point that I want to address is about, let's say, duties and taxes exemptions. We're going to talk about duties and taxes later on in the video, but let's say that, of course, as any other country, you don't always have to pay duties and taxes. There are some exceptions, and the exceptions are when you're sending gifts, let's say a family member or friend and sending to a Canadian citizen a gift that is below 60 Canadian dollars in terms of value, declared value, then no duties, no taxes. If the product value, declared value of the shipment is below 20 Canadian dollars, no matter what it is, then you don't pay duties and taxes. And if you're sending personal items from abroad, while you're abroad, you're sending your stuff home, then of course you don't have to pay duties and taxes on it. Now, when we think about shipping cross-border to Canadian customers and consumers, well, there are some steps involved. There's the initial purchase, there is the transit, so the parcel is moved from one country to another, so another country is basically Canada, and the goods are declared to the customs, so there's a declaration. The Canadian custom officer will basically assess duties and taxes and deliver the parcel to the customer that will eventually find a form attached to the shipment where there are all the indications on how to pay the duties and taxes. You can also, as a Canadian citizen, you can let's say, assess for your goods, self-declare your goods. Basically, you ask the courier to don't clear the goods at the custom for you, but you do it yourself. If you somehow want to self-assess the duties and taxes for some reason, let's say to your company or something like that, you can do that, but you need to inform the courier. Otherwise, everything goes smooth, no matter if it's DAP or DDP, basically, with the courier at the border. Now, let's go back to receiving gifts, right? So when you receive a gift, anyone who is shipping a gift to Canadian citizens basically can ship duty-free and tax-free as long as it's the declared value of the gift is below 60 Canadian dollars. Now, what if it's above, right? There are duties and taxes, but you don't pay duties and taxes on the entire value, let's say 80. You pay duties and taxes on the difference, and the difference is 80 minus 60. So you pay duties and taxes only on the difference between the final declared value and 60 Canadian dollars. So if you declare for 80, you just pay duties and taxes on the difference of 80 minus 60, so $20. Overall, there is basically an HS code for gifts when you have to declare gifts, and that is 98160000, and I'm gonna write it here somewhere so you can keep it in mind. As long as it's below 60 Canadian dollars, you're not gonna pay duties and taxes, but you also need to properly declare that. The custom officer need to see that it's a gift. So that's where the commercial invoice comes into picture, where in the declaration you can write basically that the reason of export is a gift. It's not a purchase. It's not, I don't know, it's not a replacement, for example, for some damaged goods or whatever. It's a gift. Or if you're doing via post, then you may want to just stick a note card or something, so they need to see, no matter how. It's not necessarily, you know, you don't really need to use a commercial invoice to write down that it's a gift. You can even leave a note. They literally wrote that in the Canadian, you know, custom website, so you can definitely just write a note, but as long as they can clearly identify that it's a gift. Now, there is some trade compliance that the custom officer runs from time to time. They may run, they may even check your website, to be honest. They identify the company that is selling cross-border, then they identify the company and they check if you actually declare it correctly. So there's a trade compliance in terms of declaration of goods, like let's say the tariffs. So what is the classification? Is it the correct HS code or not? Is that the correct value or not, for example? And if the duties and taxes that are paid are actually correct. Now, let's say that you're import by using a courier, an express courier. Well, there is pretty much, you know, common rules. You need to declare properly commercial invoices. You can choose DDP or DAP, Incoterms. It's fast, it's reliable. They do the custom clearance for you. Pretty much everything that we already know so far. But there is a program in Canada which is called Courier Low Value Shipments, which is basically a program that speeds up and streamlines the way you report and account for shipments, for the value, the declaration, and everything that the courier does. So it's mainly for couriers. You better choose the right one that is in this program, because it's going to be faster, easier, and everything is streamlined. So this program is mainly for couriers, and it has been created for express couriers custom clearance to make it easier and simpler, let's say. But overall, how can you, let's say, you know, you need to participate in this program, you need to be eligible, but at the same time, your shipment must be below 3,300 Canadian dollars declared as a declared value. Before it was 2,500, and also goods cannot be, let's say, restricted or prohibited, the goods that they are clearing under this program. And of course, the company needs to be eligible, needs to be in the program, not eligible actually, it needs to be in the program, the courier who's handling the goods. Overall, in Canada, there is the identification process for freight forwarders and couriers, so they have codes assigned, codes for couriers, codes for freight forwarders to be, let's say, eligible for this program overall, you know, to get different benefits. But we're gonna just skip that part. Let's move into importing via mail. Well, the process is pretty much similar, Incoterms, declarations, value, and so on. So we're just gonna cover that in a minute. But let's look at something that we don't know probably yet. We'll need to do a declaration, which is not through a commercial invoice, but it's through a declaration that is called CN22 or CN23, which is especially for postal clearance, let's say. Then generally the custom clearance take around a day, and they run custom clearance 6 days a week, so kind of fast at the end of the day. And you will pay duties and taxes most likely directly at the delivery, so they will stick a form on your box. You have all the instructions to pay duties and taxes within a certain period of time. Remember that Canada Post charges a handling fee of $9.95 Canadian dollars for handling your shipment when duties and taxes are due. So for example, if your product, the shipment value is below 20 Canadian dollars, there are no duties and taxes that apply, right? So there's no handling fee that Canada Post charges you. But if the declared value of your shipment, of your product, whatever is in the box, is above 20 Canadian dollars, then duties and taxes are due, right? So in that case, Canada Post will charge you a handling fee of 9.95 Canadian dollars per shipment. Overall, the flow will be that the items will be, let's say, presented the mails will be presented to the Canadian border, and there will be a first, let's say, assessment, a primary inspection. If there's nothing suspicious, then you move to the next step, which will be release the goods and go deliver. Or there's a second inspection or assessment, which is when something is suspicious, so we will just check a little bit more, and if everything is fine, goods are released. If not, goods are seized. That's the seizure. Now, of course, when we're shipping cross-border, there are some mandatory information and minimum information we should share. As a sender, let's say the shipper needs to share those information, but overall, you know, the customer needs to provide them and the shipper needs to declare them. I'm gonna read them so it's easier and we don't skip anything, you don't miss anything. So there must be name, complete address of the sender with zip codes and everything, name plus complete address with zip code, phone number and everything of the addressee, so the receiver, the consignee, the description of the goods, the HS code, the value, the quantity, the weight, the date of shipment, when it has been shipped, and the signature of the sender. And we also need to remember that everything must be declared in English or French, and we need to have, let's say, zip codes, numbers in Arabic numerals and Roman letters. Now, go back to duties and taxes. So, what's the calculation method overall? Well, generally the Canadian border will take just the FOB value, which means intrinsic value of your product, whatever you declare it for, without duties and taxes on top of it, just the value of the product. And they're gonna apply duty percentage. How do we calculate the GST? Which means goods and service tax, or the PST, provincial sales tax? We calculate it of the FOB value plus duties. So let's recap. Let's say that your product is worth $100. You pay 10% of duties, then you pay 10% on the product value, which is the FOB value, so on $100. $100 plus 10% duties is 110, and that's where we're gonna apply our GST, and then always on 110 we're gonna apply the PST, provincial sales tax. So now Canada has two types of taxes, the goods and service tax and also the provincial tax. So there's always a 5% of GST that you need to pay upon import, but also a provincial tax that may apply based on the province you're going to deliver the goods to. So some provinces have 0 provincial tax, some provinces have 8 or 5, it depends, or 7, so there are additional taxes basically to pay based on the province. Remember, if the value of the product declared is below 20 Canadian dollars, no duties and taxes are due. If it's above, you have to pay for them. If there's any, let's say, package coming and originating, be careful, from Mexico or United States, then you have the double in terms of threshold. So any goods that is declared below 40 Canadian dollars, no taxes to pay, and anything below 150 Canadian dollars, no duties to pay. So that's only for products originating from United States and Mexico. That's basically the NAFTA agreement, and now it's called CUSMA. Now, how can we establish the value of the goods when we are shipping them to a customer? Well, this FOB value, what it is that the selling price, the cost. That's something that everyone always asks me, how much is the declared value? For how much I need to declare it? Well, first of all, look at the country rule. Like in this case, we follow FOB, so you don't need to list the freight fee, let's say the shipping fee on the commercial invoice. You don't need to list the insurance fee. You just need to list the value of your product, which can follow different valuation methods. So in this case, it's FOB. If it was another country with chief value, which can be, for example, Japan, then you have to declare and you're going to pay duties and taxes on the chief value. So you need to list on the commercial invoice the cost of the product, which is most likely the selling price if it's a sale, an e-commerce sale, the insurance fee and the shipping fee. Overall, let's talk about Canada. So we have different methodologies on how to assess the value of the declared value of your product when you're sending out to, when you're shipping it to your customer in Canada. The very first one is the transaction value. So the transaction value is literally the value that comes out of the transaction, which is basically the order on your e-commerce store made by your customer. So if the customer pays you $10, then that's the transaction value, because the transaction was of $10. Then if there hasn't been any, for example, if there wasn't any transaction because you are, I don't know, selling something for free, like you know, sending a sample or something like that, you can, or for any reason where there's no transaction that you can have on hand, let's say an invoice or whatever, then you can use the transaction value for identical goods. Anything that is identical to your product, you take the value and you put on it. Another case would be, a third option would be transaction value for similar goods. So we have transaction value of your product, no transaction, then second step, how can I evaluate my product and the shipping, let's say, for this shipment? Well, you take an identical good, an identical product, and you see how much is it sold for, and you use that value. If you're not able to find an identical product, then you move forward. What's the next valuation method? The next valuation method is the transaction value for similar goods. If you're selling a camera, there must be another camera that you can use as a reference with the same, let's say, technicalities and features that your camera has to assess the approximate value at least. And then there's the deductive value method, and there are actually other two methods that I'm not going to just not discuss about, because if you're at this point, you're not sure about your declared value, maybe it's better if you just go for some rulings. What's the ruling? Well, it's basically asking to Canada border, so to the Canada custom clearance, let's say, to the custom border, let's say, office, about the declared value, the tariff to assign, the description to assign to your product. You ask them to classify everything for you. So you ask them what's the HS code that you need to apply. You ask them how much you need to declare it for. You ask them about marking, how you should mark your product, okay, the labels in English, in French, whatever, and all the stuff, and basically anything that comes with it in terms of declaration. But you must be very, very careful with that, because from the moment you ask for a ruling and they issue anything, you know, like this is supposed to be the declared value, this is supposed to be your tariff number, your classification and so on, you cannot change it anymore. You're forced to use what they gave you, because that's official at that point. So, you know, you may want to think twice before requesting a ruling, especially if you think your product is a little bit, let's say, complex to classify. You may pay a lot more duties if the classification that they assign to your product has a higher duty on it, basically, that can apply. So just be careful. Then remember that when you want to classify the goods to ship to Canada, you have to keep in mind that Canada has a 10-digit HS code, so the first 6 are common worldwide, and then Canada has 4 additional digits, which are subheadings based on the, of course, type of product. Now, there are still a lot of things that we should talk about. For example, FTAs, free trade agreements that Canada may have with other countries, and rules of origin. How can you make sure that you get that specific preferential rate, and how can I actually assess the origin of my product if it's always different, like it has different type of raw materials in it, like a jam, you know, marmalade, strawberry marmalade or strawberry jam that basically may have strawberries from one country and sugar from another, and then they're manufactured in another country. So it's like 3 countries involved, so there are different rules, and this is a bit long, so I'm just gonna dedicate a separate let's say video just on that, how to identify the preferential rate that applies to you, and how to identify the country of origin for your product based on the different scenarios. Okay, so I will try to see if I can link it here somewhere as soon as I have it. Otherwise, just click by next week, just click and search on my channel, and you're gonna find the rules of origin, FTAs, basically video with all the explanations that you may need. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any questions about importing to Canada, either for commercial purposes or personal use, anything like that. We do have another video, so you can check on the YouTube channel. There's like the video about importing to Canada for commercial purposes. I don't think I'm gonna make another video, so if you have any questions, just comment or contact me at the email that you find in the description, and we can talk about it, especially if you need some help. Thanks again for watching. Remember to subscribe to our channel, leave a like and a comment if you enjoyed the video. See you in the next one.